Let's jump into this conversation around AI.
Hmm.
Where have you seen AI now moving into the accessibility space, and what are your thoughts on the capabilities of AI and maybe concerns around the use of AI?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much right in the middle zone of 50% benefit, 50% danger. And there are people who drift in either direction on that. Before we even called it AI, automatic speech recognition for captions had been around for a long time. And I was pretty solidly opposed to it. First of all, I was running a caption operation with a lot of people with a lot of jobs who cared deeply about quality and accuracy and never a typo and no latency and, frame accurate. Don't divide a noun from an adjective. I mean, all these rules. And then the first ASR came out, I guess the first time I really experienced was on YouTube, and it was kind of a mess. It was really not very good. And so I felt confident like, no, this is 10 years away, and it's always going to be 10 years away. Well, look around you now. Not only is it everywhere, and of course, every video conferencing tool and a lot of other places, but also it's getting better, and the latency is really, really low, and it will still make mistakes on names. It'll still make mistakes on locations. AI for captioning really struggles with accents and people who have dysarthric speech. So it still is not there yet. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine from France, and the captions were horrible because his accent was so strong. Well, now the major tech companies have banded together on really trying to improve and sample a lot more different kinds of speech. So there's the rule for you when you're building your language models, really expand it to include not just what you consider the typical user, but all kinds of edge cases, because your AI will fail in all kinds of ways if you don't include the complete expansive nature of humans. Humans come in all types and sizes and flavors, and your model should be trained on all of them, or else you'll just keep seeing failure left and right. So AI has absolutely become pretty solid in the field of speech to text. We rely on it a lot, become very disruptive of the captioning companies, obviously. And they're trying to make a buck at this. And then, because of the great lack of image tagging online, what's known as alt text is a way of authoring web pages so that if you're a blind person using a screen reader, it'll tell you what is in the image. That was missing most of the time. Some companies then sprang up to facilitate the creation of alt text. And now the machines are doing a lot of it, and some of it okay, and some of it missing entirely in terms of context, in terms of what's the meaning of this image. You've got a dog on screen. You can't just say dog. Maybe you want to know what type of dog. Maybe you want to know that it's a dog that has an injury or is in danger or is a seeing eye dog. Well, the machines need to learn all of those parameters to give you that information in context. And then the next frontiers, since I mentioned audio description of movies and TV shows, it's a major leap forward to say that a machine AI could actually create descriptions of an entertainment film and time it in between the dialogue, because audio description doesn't step on dialogue, and actually tell you what are the key visual elements you need to understand the program. I guess I'll learn from my own history being a skeptic of ASR at first for captioning. I don't think the machines are going to do audio description on dynamic images anytime soon, but I think I better be prepared.
You make a couple of really good points there around context and understanding, and how it's not just about what is on screen, but the context of what is on screen. Your example of descriptive text for film, and, your example of alt tags and alt text in web pages, that it's not just about what is there, but it's about the context and the story and making sure that there is this equality between what one person experiences and what the next person experiences. Have you experienced a sort of good enough mentality in the accessibility world, or does it feel like most people are really truly striving for that equality of experience?
You'll get the good enough more on the content provider side than on the user side, though it's a pretty low bar to say, well, it's better than nothing. It's like, really, is that your parameter for success, better than nothing? But yeah, there's an engineer at YouTube who is deaf who did feel like better than nothing. And you sit there and you try to figure out what is it that they're saying. It's just so off. But without that, you don't get even a chance to understand it. I myself would wish that people would hold off a little bit before releasing something publicly that was better than nothing or good enough. If Google had waited another year or two, they would have had a tremendous jump in quality. But no, they put it out right away, and I guess that's, fail fast and break things as an attitude. But when the things you might be breaking are people with disabilities, I think maybe there's an argument for holding off a little bit until you achieve a certain level of quality, avoid the harm that you might be causing. A wonderful professor up in Canada named Yuta Treviranus says, when she talks about AI and people with disabilities rely on technology. Sometimes the technology is inside their bodies, pacemakers, prosthetics. You don't want to make some mistakes when you're using AI to control those technologies. So, you really have to think about the cases where you're applying AI to accessibility and think seriously about what's the downside. These red teams absolutely are essential, and I'm glad that's being talked about as essential for the rollout of AI, because people don't necessarily think about the downside right off the bat. When I was working at Yahoo, when we had an app that would fail, sometimes we'd do a postmortem. We would never do a premortem, like, what could this go wrong? How could we create some harm here? I think we need to do some premortems on the technology that's coming out today.
Yeah, it's that difference between design and redesign. And you,
Hmm.
you talked earlier on about redesigning technologies and having to go to these tech companies and introducing a process or a step that they now have to adapt into their technology, something like VHS or broadcast, versus let's look at it ahead of time and see what we can do so that we're not, backpedaling to, you know, reinvent this.